Hey guys, welcome to our Big Think conversation. My name is Kapono Siari. I'm Executive Director of What School Could Be, and I'm joined by my co-host, Susanna Johnson. Hey, Susanna.
Hi, Capono. Thanks so much for that, and thanks for being here, everybody. Susanna Johnson, Director of Coaching and Curriculum with What School Could Be, and so excited about today's conversation. So I want to jump right into this very quickly. And for those of you waiting for the long bio, you're going to have to keep waiting for a second because there's other stuff I want to get to first. I just want to introduce our guests. So thanks so much for being here. Olatunde Sobomehin, I think we're good. Yes, CEO and co-founder of Street Code Academy, nonprofit that teaches free tech classes to communities of color. He's taught at several classes at Stanford's Haas Center for Public Service and the D School, where we can also find Mr. Sam Seidel, the Director of Strategy and Research and at the Stanford D School's K-12 lab, and the author of Hip Hop Genius: Remixing High School Education. They together embody creative hustle, and I like I said, I can't say enough that I'm so excited to have this conversation with you all. But before we get too deeper, you guys introducing your stories and your bio, I would like to start us off by unpacking the title, which is an incredible critical thinking move just to unpack that mindset. And then I saw that you had done that when I started reading the book. I was like, oh, this is good. So would you mind please sharing the unpacking of creative hustle?
I'll give the 2 words, and Sam, you give the remix on it. Creative hustle. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Both of you have amazing backdrops and amazing work, and I love the opportunity to be able to share all of this with you and the audience. Sam and I, for various reasons, really aligned on doing some work, and one of the main reasons was that we both came from a passion in building bridges across different communities, right? And so he had done work in the past where he was working with folks that were incarcerated. He was working with folks who, had opportunities to go to Ivy League universities, right? So he spanned this array of opportunity, and I had this similar background, and so we wanted to come up with a phrase, and we wanted to come up with a title of a class. It wasn't supposed to be a book at the time. For a class that would appeal to that broad of an audience and would invite folks into learning and make that learning accessible. And that means a lot to me because I'm around so many communities that feel like, even though the information may be relevant, even though but the environment and the way and the packaging and the way it's presented is not inviting. And so we landed on this phrase, creative hustle, after all that we'll talk about. And we love that title. That title has really done what we aimed to do, which was to give the sort of appreciation for the wide spectrum of ways in which genius shows up, and the ways in which goals show up, in the ways that which contribution shows up. So I love it. But 2 words, and then I'll let Sam sort of talk a little bit about what those 2 words mean. I know we're going long-winded here, but imagination and action. Imagination and action. And Sam could talk a little bit about what those 2 words, why those 2 words are kind of synonymous with the title.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost Sam's sound for a second. No sound.
Wow, Sam just cut me off, man, when you try to settings. But I'll just say that imagination is like it's the we were going around today at a strategic planning process, and they asked me what my superpower is, and I think it's very similar to Sam in that we both believe in miracles. Like, we've seen things enough to where you can imagine it and it can happen. So that's the imagination. That's the creative part. But then we've also known people who have lived only in that imagination, who have lived only in the dreaming and haven't actually put it to practice. And so the action is about, how do I make this happen on a day-to-day? How do I actually materialize this in the world? And that's the action piece. So imagination and action.
Can I push into that a little bit? The subtitle is Blaze Your Own Path and Make Work That Matters. I just had a really neat conversation with 2 community educators today. They are, one of them has a mission-focused business, and the other is starting up a nonprofit. And they were talking about supporting, in this case, students and educators in service learning was what they were packaging it as, but really what it was attacking systems of privilege and dismantling systems of oppression, and then reconstructing systems of equity. And that was really, really big work. I kind of almost wanted to hand them a copy of your book. I'm not at home, so I wasn't able to hand them a copy of your book. Why? Because not necessarily because your book points their path forward, but I think your book inspires what they were asking, which is like, all right, I have a mission-based business owner. I have a nonprofit person. We kind of have this dream. What do we do with that? Like, what are the next steps for it? How are we going to make that happen? Have you got, what were your inspirations as you guys sat down and wrote this book?
How's my brother doing? Oh, my brother. You got the message 3 dots and trying to check that that camera. I don't want to play IT on the podcast.
Right. You can check the 3 dots, or you can get rid of the headphones and see if maybe it's the connection there. But don't worry, we got it. Olatunde got your back on this, and he has. We're good.
Yeah. No.
What was the inspiration on that?
I mean, first of all, let me just start by acknowledging how powerful and how beautiful that example is, because I think we're going to see this more and more, right? Our inspiration was really, what Sam and I have spent a lifetime doing, and I don't want to get into that work, but the work that he's done, he's now at the D school, the design school at Stanford University, and they're trying to inspire creative confidence. I'm at Street Code Academy, looking at how we offer, innovation, skills and training and mindset to communities of color to inspire freedom and to create the kind of life that they want to live. So we're all about that work, right? We're heads in. We didn't need any inspiration. That is our life work. It was to trying to figure out how to inspire people to make work that matters. At the same time, I do want to mention how inspiring what your example is, because I'm seeing this as a trend. Mm-hmm. People are being, I had one sister that told me today, she said, I saw a post on LinkedIn about all of the folks that are being laid off by Fortune 50 companies. Mm-hmm. And what she said was there's a red pill and blue pill. Are you going to, and I don't know the color, so forgive my matrix black knowledge.
Love it.
Like, if one pill is saying, do you want to continue to move as, status quo and sort of be treated in the way, and I'm not pitching the layoffs as evil. I don't want to pitch that, but you'll get my point in terms of like finding a place that sees you in your full humanity, finding a place that speaks to you in your values. Or are you going to take another pill and just kind of find another way and recreate and blaze your own path that may not have been paid before? She's mentioned that this was speaking to a wide swath of folks now. Mm-hmm. And this is like the question that everybody's asking. So we just happen, I think, to have great timing where people are really asking the question, man, how do we make work that matter? I'll give you one more example. And these are all, I think, speak to your question about what's the inspiration. But we had a 57-year-old graduate of the Stanford School of Business that said, for our 30th reunion, I now think about the world differently. When I was 28, I thought about make work that makes money. When I'm 57, I want to make work that matters. And so now you have not just a moment sort of understanding the industry, but a little more introspective of someone who's saying, man, now I want to have a shift. So from all these different areas, right? You got young folks seeing how corporate America is moving. You got older folks who participated and seeing how it leaves them in their soul. Everybody is saying, man, we want to make work that matters. Those are all pieces of inspiration. But Sam and I have spent a lifetime investing in that and seeing the beauty that comes from that. And we had to write it, right? We didn't need the inspiration. When they gave us the opportunity, it was a class at first. When they gave us the opportunity to put it in book form, we were excited.
Hey Sam, it's going? Because JT said he can pop on if he needs.
Here I am. I'm popping in right now just to see what we
We're
can do
live,
here.
but this is how we roll, and it's all good because JT will edit this out for the non-live version if you're with
But
us
you know
live.
what?
Back
You gotta
the
roll
scenes.
you gotta roll with what happens.
You get to see behind the scenes for a second. JT
Sam,
will edit it out for the not live.
next to your like if you hover over your screen, you'll see 3 dots. If you on the bottom down there, not in the screen itself, but on the bottom, you tried to edit the mic settings to see which mic you were selecting. That didn't work. Or the settings on the very bottom of the screen. Try that little gear at the very bottom. Let me see if I can. And you selected the right mic there. Let's see. Hang on. I'm gonna do a little. Everybody's getting a chance to see what we're doing here. This may get weird.
No, it's good because you know what? People don't get to see JT. This is the
It's true.
JT.
I'm always behind.
Always behind, never in front.
It's true. I'm gonna just do a quick.
You're like Ellen DeGeneres when she's like pointing to her producer on the side and being like, "Hey, producer JT."
Here we are. Okay, I'm gonna do a little. If I screen share, it's gonna get weird. But if I upload this here, just so we can see the same thing that I'm looking at, then this might work. Feel free to keep talking though. We could also, if you want to try to leave, you could. If this doesn't work, you could try to leave the stream and come back. I'm giving a thumbs up to that.
Yeah, and we'll just pause. Janelle and company online will have a good laugh at watching us figure this out and get it pull behind the magic curtain of what school could be.
Seriously.
We'll edit it down for JT. Will edit it out.
I'll keep us going a little bit, but with the stuff that's not as important and relevant as what we're going to hear from Sam when he gets back in. But when you were talking about the unpacking and breaking down ambition versus imagination, you call it in the book, it's awesome. But for me, I was like, oh yeah, ambition, no problem. Got that. And especially when it comes to education, because I feel that sense of urgency. I left the classroom in 2019 because I'm so impatient with changing, I love working with and seeing the change that was happening with the students that I was working with, but it wasn't fast enough or big enough. And there are too many problems, right? And so that idea of ambition is pretty strong. And I think a lot of people feel that, but we forget about imagination. There's been a lot of talk about creativity and innovation and imagination over the past few years. And yet we've gotten nowhere further in this process. And so I feel like this is us maybe taking a step back. If I'm an educator and I take a step back and I do this work for myself a little bit, it might help me to move forward. But I would do this if I was still in the classroom with my students right now. I would walk through this process with them. We would get to know each other. We would be thinking about things in a different way. I certainly am having these conversations with other educators and moving that direction. But I almost wish I could have the students to go back and do this, because I got stuck immediately when I started working through this in terms of gifts and goals and trying to imagine this stuff. But it's like we aren't encouraged to or taught this. And I know I've had creativity and imagination and skills in my life. I feel like that was something that was really strong when I was very young, and I certainly have to be a creative problem solver when it comes to work and things that are happening, logistics of life. But I don't ever like that label of creativity is tough. Questlove's book on creativity is really strong in terms of everybody's a creator, everybody's an artist. We've got this. It's okay to label it. It's okay to lean into that. But do you find that people are experiencing that too, or where creativity is the hard piece? You guys are both so creative. I'm sure they're like, oh, I could never be as creative as you. You probably hear that a lot, right? But that's the thing I think a lot of people are feeling. So, and Janelle's echoing me in this too. Yeah, like where is the creativity, and how fun would this be to do with students who might still have that imagination piece as strong in their brain as they should? Did we get Sam yet?
No. Check.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, what?
He's there.
No, really?
Yeah, you're totally there.
I'm going back behind the curtain.
JT is magic. Everybody, JT is magic.
JT, if you want to stay in the mix, sorry. But the problem is I've been so distracted with trying to figure out the tech. I have no idea what you just asked. But
That's okay.
I'm amazed. I was really like, my finger was on the leave studio, quit Chrome,
Uh-huh.
restart everything, because I've been chatting with Grant in StreamYard customer support, and that's where we had landed. There was nothing else to try, but maybe JT fixed it, or else
Yeah,
the
magic
universe.
happened.
Yeah. So big apologies to everyone who's tuned in, and of course to the host. Sorry.
I think everybody was excited to see the action. They always tune in and see this well-produced show that JT and team puts on and makes Susanna and I look good. And now they get to see what's happening.
Hopefully this was a form of therapy for everyone who's spent much of their last 2 or 3 years dealing with, online audio and video issues. You get to see someone else struggle through it. But yeah, thank you for having us, and so sorry about whatever happened there. We were all chatting right before it started. It seemed like it was fine. So
yeah, it was good, but then it went off for a second. Hey, Susanna, ask that question again.
Yeah, can you tee that up again, Susanna? Thank you.
Yeah, tee it up again. That was an important point.
The challenge of how I felt like when I was younger, I was so much more creative and I had imagination, and that was a part of it. Like for me, ambition is really easy, but the imagination piece is the enigma, and I've been actively pursuing it for a little while now. And so just, kind of, are you finding that that's true? Do you feel like imagination is the hard piece, that creativity piece where people they're reticent to even try it, I guess is sort of the question. Are you seeing that that's what's happening, or what's coming across to you?
I mean, I think that we all is always a very strong word. Most of us, most of the time receive these messages as we get older that only a few of us get to be artists, only a few of us get to be creatives, and the rest of us are supposed to sort of fall in line and do whatever that thing that we were trained to do, or a role that society has kind of picked for us. That's why Blaze Your Own Path is such an important part of the subtitle of the book. And so, it's that old, we are all educators on this call, I think, like the old adage or whatnot about like asking a group of 5-year-olds, are you creative or are you an artist? And everyone's hand goes up. And then by the time we're teenagers, 5% of our hands go up. That is not an accident. There's a lot that goes into that becoming how we're conditioned. And I think our hope is that with exercise, we can stretch those muscles. They're not gone, but they may have atrophied. So there is real need for most of us to figure out how to stretch those muscles again. And I think, the other piece I'd point out here, and I so apologize if I'm repeating anything that's been said, but I think there's creativity in terms of the content of what we're doing. Like we're trying to put creative work of whatever sort into the world. And then there's creativity in our approach of how we're doing that. And those are both really important, right? So that, again, is that Blaze Your Own Path piece. It's like, it may not be as simple as someone posts a job description that is already ready-made and you just pop into it. You may have to actually be part of shaping that and making the space for that work in the world. Not easy stuff. So all of that takes exercise. And, this maybe is a good place to say a little bit about the D School, which is where Tunde and I first met and first taught the Creative Hustle class before we even had an idea of doing a book or workshops or all the other things we're now doing. Because the D School is really about that. It's really about helping people build creative confidence and build creative abilities. And so it felt like a fitting place to have this conversation, because it's in the context of an institution that has been created and developed over the last 15 plus years to be a space for folks from all walks of life to come for that, like, if we're using like an electric car metaphor, that creative charging station. So it is needed, unfortunately. And on the bright side, I think we have a lot of good exercises and tools and resources to help people get that turbo boost.
Can I push in on here for a second? Because Susanna, you've gotten to really dig down deep into the book. I was just telling you earlier, I'm actually in Cairo right now, and I don't have my copy with me. But for people who have never even opened it up yet, they were interested. Olatunde, Sam, can you tell those people about, like, what do they get? They know about the title. What are they getting in this book?
Well, first of all, we want to hear more about what you're doing in Cairo. But and you fooled me with that book. That's a virtual bookshelf behind you?
virtual, yeah.
Oh man, you had me. I thought you were
Thanks.
sitting in your home office with a great set of books behind you. So the question was about what's in the Creative Hustle book. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Tunde, do you want to speak at all about how it's structured and some of the stories, and we can kind of flip back and forth?
I'll follow up. Speak to what you how you experience it, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I mentioned a minute ago that this started as a class that we designed and taught together, and I think that's really important to understand when you're trying to understand the book, because the class was a powerful experience for our students and for us, and we really wanted to put that experience inside a book, and so. For instance, the way we taught the class, it started by hearing stories from some creative hustlers who have inspired us, meaning Tunde and me, like folks that we knew either closely or maybe more loosely. Like I think, one of the folks we invited in is like a close collaborator, brother, person we've, just been in the mix with. And then someone else was someone one of us had met once, and we were just like, this person's amazing. We want to learn from them. So just in the way that we structured the class that way, getting our students to get to hear these real stories from real people who have been through a lot, we wanted to do the same thing in the book. So it was clear to us pretty much from the very beginning when we said, like, what object are we going to create here? It was like, how do we get those stories to come to life on the pages? So some of that is through interviews and talking with a whole bunch of creative hustlers and kind of whittling it down to 9 stories, 9 profiles of people that we thought would really inspire readers. And some of it is through visuals, right? So it's not just how do we tell their story with words, but also how do we bring it to life with photographs. So our friend and collaborator and colleague Squint did these amazing photos, and our collaborator Jory Titus collaged them together with these beautiful backdrops. So like it's partially the stories and what's said, and it's partially just seeing the people and the images that represent what they've done. But we structured it in the same way that we structured the class, which was 3 big areas that we believe are really important to everyone's creative hustle. And we believe this partially because in interviewing all these creative hustlers, it kept coming up that these were the things that they had developed and cultivated. One is a really strong set of principles or values that guide their work. This is like their North Star. This is how they say yes to these 2 things and no to the other 98 things that are coming across their radar. So that's hugely important. And so how do you figure out what those principles are? The second is people. It's who you surround yourself with, who you collaborate with, who you are keeping an eye on and kind of benchmarking, and like, how is what I'm doing related to what these folks are doing? Who inspires you. And then the third is practices. It's like the rubber meets the road. Like, okay, what am I doing on a daily basis, a weekly basis, etc.? What does that look like? So I can have a lot of ideas. What are the actions that attach to those ideas? So that's how we structured the book. And then just like our class, where we had this activity that helps folks think about how they move from their gifts to their goals through those 3 lanes I just described, the book is structured the same way. So we start out by asking readers to take some time and think about what gifts they have and what goals they want to set for themselves. And then as they're reading through the book, we're trying to help move them across from gifts to goals. And we actually ask people, like, bust out a marker, bust out a piece of paper, like, let's really do this together. And I feel like at points in the book, you can feel Tunde and me like trying to leap out of the 2-dimensional pages and like grab you, not in a like aggressive way, but just like, let's go, let's do this. Like, this is the work. And so that's the setup of the book, is really trying to both take all the good elements of the course and offer it to a lot more people, and also gain some things that we didn't have in the course, right? That are allowed by having the kind of time horizon of a couple of years of crafting this thing to really tune the dials and get pretty precise with some of the kinds of stories and prompts and invitations that we share.
I love, oh, sorry. Were you going to jump in there? Go ahead.
No. Please. I love that.
No.
I'm just excited. I'm just listening to him say, I want to go pick it up. I didn't bring it with me. Go ahead.
No, it's definitely there. Well, and and the way you frame it too, like establishing your code, knowing your network, and creating your rituals, like that actually has helped me to calm it down so that I don't feel overwhelmed about like my gifts. What are those? Like, that's too hard sometimes. So I love that. But there's a question. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
People just get so jammed up on the gifts. And I mean, I love it because I relate to it. It's like the hardest part for me to say, to deign to suggest that I'm like good at anything or have any particular gift. And so one of the ways that we've found is really helpful to help folks such as myself think about it a little differently. We have a number of prompts for like helping people into that question, but one of them is like, what's something that people sometimes mention that they think you're good at or bring to the world? I've found that that's really helpful. It's like, oh, well, would never say I have a gift as a writer, but people do mention that from time to time. So I guess I could put that down. So just wanted to share that because we hear that like probably more than any other piece of feedback is like, I got stuck on the gifts. Like, I know my goals, I know my principles that guide me, but gifts. So,
yeah. Well, and what I did was I just skipped ahead and dipped into my network and asked them, so there's that. And other people have done that recently too. Right. So I think that's
even better. Yeah.
It's like, how do you get there? And so that it's great. And I think that this also comes to this question of combining ambition and imagination and moving into this space. And a great question that Josh has brought up from, he's most likely to succeed in Hawaii, but all the different things, what school could be, ambassador, all the things that he is, podcast host and everything. Wonder if you could speak to the connection between finding a purpose and creativity. If purpose drives one forward, and it feels like purpose also drives creativity, right? So that connection, you guys know, you can see the question.
Yeah, I love the question. Because, to your point, Susanna, which is a point that I found so consistent in hosting these exercises and these classes, is that, whether it's the classroom, whether it's the workforce, whether it's even within the context of our own households, we don't get enough time to ask the question, what are our goals? We don't get to ask the question, what are the principles that guide us, right? And then to look at it in one snapshot, and we, to echo and to add on to what you get in the book, you get these inspiring stories. You get it's almost, feels like an Instagram feed because it's just constantly sort of feeding you with information and inspiration, and you feel like you can kind of move through it quickly. But you get access to this canvas, which is 8.5 by 11 sheet or any kind of size sheet of paper, and you can quickly sort of craft up this gift to goals canvas. And where Capono, you can we've hosted this workshop in 15 minutes, right? Where you can quickly draft your goals, quickly craft your gifts. What are your principles? And you can move through it, 1 minute each question and kind of get through this. But what it does, and this is to the question, it drives home a purpose. What am I really trying to get through in the world? And then it forces out, what I loved about Sam's answer was creativity is not just the output, it's the process. So now I'm getting creative about how do I move from my gifts to my goals. And that, when you have a sense of determination and drive around a purpose, now you find out how I'm going to make it work. And Susanna, you were an example of that, right? When you said, I really want to get these gifts down, I have a question that was sort of a mini purpose. Let me get that down. If I don't have the answer, I'm gonna go to my community and they're gonna help me get the answer. But somehow, some way, I'm gonna find an answer to this. And that sort of purpose drives the creativity, right? And one of my favorite chapters is, in fact, it's the chapter that Sam held up, was one of his longtime homeboys named T.C. Ellis. And T.C. Ellis has is really gripping emotional story that I both resonate and respect. His story, and it mentions moments where he took this extremely risky move of like producing a song that was unauthorized about for Prince, about Prince, and it ended up where he was Prince's first. It had a good ending to the story, right? He became Prince's first signed rap artist, but that risk and that move was from a place of like, I gotta put it out there. And there was so much drive that it led to a determination. It led to a creativity in him finding his purpose. And that kind of drive is so powerful. I mean, we have, Tessa Aragona a Detroit native Filipino immigrant who talks about the challenges of watching her father not be able to negotiate, negotiate for a car because of a language barrier, and what that drove her to do when she got into the world of designing. She was working, I think, for GM, and designed a whole new process for purchasing cars that led to the first online through GM's website being able to negotiate online. So you didn't have to deal with that language barrier in person. So it's just this let me have a purpose and watch the different ways that purpose drives me to be creative in getting there.
We try to do these to be conversational. I'm going to take a little bit of a risk and probably speak more than's wise for the host to speak. I'm going to go back a second to the gift, if you don't mind, and then I have a question from that. If my colleagues, friends, people I've worked with in Hawaii have heard me tell the story of the Auntie Puanani Burgess, one of our kupuna, our elders in Hawaii, tells. I'll try to do a shortened version of it. But Auntie Puanani is one of my elders, one of my kupuna, one of my mentors. She's a social worker, a teacher, native Hawaiian. She's my native Hawaiian Japanese Yoda. She certainly is, doesn't look 700 years old, but she has the wisdom of somebody 700 years old. And she when she facilitates, and so in this case, she's facilitating a group of 12 boys who are in a special education class. She starts off by asking them to tell a story about their name, a story about their community, and a story about their strength. And she's working in communities, in predominantly Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, predominantly socially and economically disenfranchised communities. The kids can tell a story about their name. They all have a story about their names. So they were teased for something, they were named for something. And she works in communities where it's really easy to tell a story about, the community. They're dynamic. They're amazing places. They're hard. They're great. There's just things, right? They're thick communities with lots happening. And she always knows when she gets them to tell a story about their strengths, that's going to be the hard part. And she's facilitating this group of 12 boys, and they're going around the table, and they get around once in their names. They get around twice in their communities. And as the third time as they go around, she can feel the heat off of this boy over here. And as it gets closer, she can feel the anger, and she can feel the anxiety. And when she gets to him, he's totally silent. And she's using her Jedi mind tricks. After working through him for a second, he just pounds his fist on the desk and stands up, and he says, if I had any effing gifts, I wouldn't be in this effing class. And he just storms out. And at that point, the bell rings, and it's just all a mess. And she's like regretting, Jedi mind tricking him into this situation, and the wrong moment, and the bell ringing. And then, 2 days later, she bumps into him at the local supermarket. Every neighborhood has the type of supermarket that you bump into people at, right? And this one is Tamura's in this neighborhood that she's working in, and she sees the boy, and she's like, this is not the place I want to Jedi mind trick him out of this. I want him in a good setting. But of course, like he catches her eye, she catches his eye, and he bounds over to her with this big smile. Auntie, he says, Auntie, it was missed the day before. Auntie, I was thinking about your question. I know what my gifts are. When I go spearfishing, every time I go spearfishing, I can bring fish home and put food on my parents' table. And when the shark swims up and looks at me, I look him back in the eyes and I say, Uncle, I'm only taking what I need. And the shark swims away. I know what my gifts are. I can feed my family. And he gives her this huge hug and runs back to his family. And at that point, Auntie Pua turns to us, the educators, right? And she's like, what role did school play in having this boy not know his gifts? Why did he need to wait till senior year to figure out that he had gifts? And did we play a role in him feeling like he didn't have any gifts? It's a really, she uses a story to ask us to question how we can do this better in schools, which is why I do have a question. I have a pitch and a question. The pitch is February 27th, 2023, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. There's one big step, the follow-up from this discussion. And I do hope everybody joins us, because I think in that one big step, we will explore, how do we do this? How do we take the recipe that's in this book, Creative Hustle, and make sure that other kids aren't like this kids, that they actually have an opportunity to find their gifts. Anyway, I hope you guys can show up on the 27th. So question, like educators, right? Educators tune into this thing. We don't want to facilitate, we don't want to be and we don't want to be party to a system where our kids don't find their gifts, don't find their strengths, aren't able to live out their North Stars. What have you guys, I mean, what are the tools from the books? What have you guys seen? What are some examples of this working in schools? I'm a teacher. What do I do? What's working?
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. What was the name of the elder who shared that with you?
Auntie Pua Nani Burgess.
Thank you to Auntie Pua, and thank you for relaying it to us. It's a powerful story, and I think it speaks to so much beyond Creative Hustle, just Tunde and my work in education over the last several decades. I don't mean to speak for you too much here, Tunde, but just through all the conversations we've had, I know that this is something that drives us both. I mean, we've both dedicated our careers to various forms of education, both in communities and in and outside of school buildings, I guess I'll say. And one of the things that's driven me, at least, out of school buildings more frequently is the desire to not have that happen, not have someone get to senior year and not be able to speak to what a strength is or feel like it's been honored. Going back to the point about creativity, not having people get to senior year and having decided or been told or inferred that they're not creative. I mean, we definitely can do better. And a lot of my career has been either working outside of schools or working on schools that do, right? Project-based schools that ask young people, could be, what are your strengths? Could be, what are your interests? And I think, like, one of the keys, maybe I can tie this back to, I think it was Josh's question a little bit around purpose. I also think we have to be careful not to lock kids or anyone of any age into something because it's a strength, right? I was good at this one thing once when I was 5, and now everyone's telling me that's what I have to do forever. Like, I had an amazing poetry teacher who got me excited about poetry. I don't know if I would have loved poetry if I hadn't walked into this room and seen this person who was on fire about this thing, right? So I think there's a mix that I think we need. But what I like about purpose is, like, purpose is something bigger. That's not a particular strength or a particular solution. That's like a force I'm trying to move in the world. And then if I'm really clear about that, hopefully I'm also really open about everything else. Like, what are all the ways that I could get there? What are all the different ways what are all the different ways that young person could have fed his family? Like, that may have been one. Maybe that was the best one, the right one for that time period, that place. But getting clear that there's also other ways. So if there's a storm, if something happens with those fish, whatever, like, if he's clear on what that is, hopefully he can find other routes. And that's a place where that creativity might come in to say, I know what I want to do is feed my family. What are all the ways I can make that happen here? So my hope is that we both really honor the strengths and brilliance of young people in our schools and outside our schools, people of all ages. But I think we're talking here about kind of K-12 students. Really honor those strengths and that brilliance, but never use that to confine what we think they're capable of. So I think, Susanna, you mentioned my other book, Hip Hop Genius, right? And a lot of that book is about honoring young people's brilliance in the realm of culture and music. But one of my concerns with that book and with all the work I've done in that area is not wanting that to be confused for saying, oh, that's all these students can do or should do. That folks may be really talented in that area. Maybe they want to explore another genre of music or culture. Maybe they just want to do something entirely different, right? So wanting to really be sensitive and say, like, the most important thing, I think, is understanding what are those values? What is that sense of purpose? What are you trying to move in the world? And that doesn't have to be static. That can, young people can develop that. And then trying to both honor the ways that that's already making sense and happening, and making space for young folks to explore new channels and avenues.
If somebody is trying to, there was Josh had a comment earlier about sort of the unlearning of what we've done to structures and taking away creativity. Do you have some, like, immediate advice, strategies, thinking, how do you, or maybe it's even a precursor question of, like, how hard is it to get even educators to back up a little bit and let go? Because you do spend a lot of time in that space too, but is there a process for that unlearning, or a step one of letting go of our preconceived notions of either pigeonholing or not honoring our own strengths? Like there are two flip sides of that are really detrimental, and we've got to unlearn that stuff. Thoughts on that or ideas?
No, Sam, before I saw you go off mute, and I know we're playing double dutch here, trying to figure out when to step in. I'm still stuck on that story that you mentioned, and I have no question to answer either of your questions, but I have no answer for either of those questions. However, it does make me appreciate that this teacher was at the local store, that that there was a way to follow up. It made me appreciate that even just posing the question allowed him to think about it and eventually come up with that solution. And the question and my hope is in me trying to figure out the answers to the question that you've mentioned, right? How do we unlearn what we learn? I have 4 children in the school system. And I see the lack of my time, my ability to sort of think about some of these big things. I want all of my kids to know their gifts. I want all of my kids to know they're not fixed in a particular gift. I want all my kids to know this life is a process, and I want them to know those things. And there's so few opportunities for us to ask those questions because it's so jammed with everything else except that. And I love that, one of the things that I've loved about our process, and it was intentional, and I appreciate Sam for kind of bringing up the example. The option for us, when we first came with the class, a very polished form, and it was beautiful. It was semi-beautiful, but it was at least designed. And Sam coming, I think, from the D school, or coming just from his background, asked the question, well, should we have it be designed or should we have it be scrappy? Something you could do on your own. And I'm so glad we chose the scrappy route, because it allows people to be able to keep asking the question. And while I have I'm doing I'm doing a class for 5th graders on Creative Hustle coming up in our Street Code Academy class. And I can't wait because we're going to be asking those questions very early. What are your gifts? What are your goals? What are your principles? I mean, I can't wait to ask 5th graders, what are those things, and to have them develop. But here's the hope. The hope is not that you have a finite piece of paper that you could put down and frame that will mark the rest of your life. No, the hope is that you get in the routine of checking in with yourself and asking the question. And over time, you develop and know that it's ongoing, because I myself have dozens of these sheets. Every time we do the workshop, I do another sheet. I come up with another way to kind of hone in on what are my goals, what are my gifts. I have another way. So when I get asked a question like this morning in the icebreaker, what's your superpower? I now am thinking about my sheet and the left-hand side of all those things that I labeled as my gifts. And over time, I begin to hone in. Oh, you know what I really do? My gift is really in just believing in miracles, which is what I said today. And that came from, oh man, you really see possibilities in others. Oh, you did. And so eventually I got to be able to put some language to a gift that I might not otherwise have. And that may be different on how I articulate it the next time I go around. So I'm just, question and which was that story was so powerful. It makes me think about what we're going to do, how we unlearn it. But I think if I can say it in two words or 2 bullet points, one is make space for it. Make space to ask these questions within every context that we have. And 2 is just honing in on that beautiful point that Sam made, which is this is not locked in. This is scrappy, y'all. We're gonna have to recreate these, time in, time out, because it's a journey. We learn more about ourselves. We learn more about our place in the world, and those things will shift.
I love that and co-sign it. Just was trying to think of a few resources for folks who are like really hungry, like want to do something today themselves with their colleagues at the next staff meeting, students, if you're listening and on, with peers and, in a group or in a class, and just 2 resources. I mean, one, the D School's website has a ton of stuff that's useful for this. One of the most famous ones is the Marshmallow Challenge, which has been, one that's been used in schools a whole lot. But 2 other websites, in addition to the D School resources page on the website. One is stokedeck.io, or if you just Google Stoke Deck, I think it'll probably come up, which is just a whole set of activities to stoke different aspects of design processes. It's not all about creativity. Some of it is about empathy or other aspects of the work that we do, but definitely has a lot in there designed to stoke creativity. Improv games, just it's fun stuff. It's relatively quick stuff. Thank you to JT or whoever's getting these up in real time. The other one, we'll leave that one up for a sec. Just make sure people have a chance to jot it down. The other one I was going to mention is called protobot.org, which just gives you an endless series of kind of random ideas to prototype, right? So like I'll pull it up right now and just tell, maybe I can share one. So design a way to check stock prices for a spy. Design a wedding dress that is alive, right? These are endless. I'm just hitting randomize and it just keeps giving you new ones. So that can be another tool if you've got a group to just play around and get sparked with some ideas that probably wouldn't have come up in your staff meeting otherwise. And I think there's some suggestions on that site about how to do an activity around it. But just wanted to share those 2 resources. And then since we're putting up websites, if we could put up that resources page on the D School site, there is a ton there as well. So it's dschool.stanford.edu/resources, I think. And I think that's another, you can scroll through. There's a whole bunch of different stuff for folks in different lines of work. I think you can sort by K-12 specifically on that page, but definitely between those 3, I think there's a lot of good fodder to get things started and pull other people in with you, right? Most of these are group activities, not solo.
That's amazing. Thanks for all those resources. I think that those are, I only know a few of them and I appreciate it. I think most of the people watching will have a lot to explore. I appreciate that. We're getting a little bit close to the end here. And, I think when people hear D School, they think design thinking. So before we get offline, well, one of the things they think about when they hear D School, could definitely for Sam, but for both of you guys, state of design thinking today, anything that we should be thinking about, anything, if you were giving the state of the nation of design thinking right now, specifically in education, what's happening? What are we looking at right now?
I'm happy to share some thoughts, but Tunde, I would love to hear, do you have any initial reactions? 'Cause I feel like in some ways you have you have better vantage point, like you're close in, but you also have a little distance where I'm like in the mixture every day. So I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to kick off with, or if you need a minute, I can share a little bit from our work in the lab. Yeah. Okay. I would love to hear how you would answer it. So hopefully we'll have time for both of us to say a bit. That's a huge question and something that we're thinking about all the time, Kabono. So thanks. And I'm cursing you for asking that. Because it's a tough one to do succinctly, but and for anyone who's on right now, I would love for you to drop in the chat your thoughts on this. Like I feel like I said about Tunde, like many of you all may in some ways know better because I'm so up close to some of the stuff. A couple observations I'll make though. One is I think that some number of years ago there was a lot. That notion of design thinking or human-centered design was getting popularized in the K-12 realm. And so were conversations and trainings around racial justice and equity. And I think the distance between those conversations, I don't think there ever really was, but I think there was in terms of how they were occurring in the world, I think has shrunk and needs to shrink. And those are not 2 separate topics. I think that, well, they are in a sense, but I think that they're very interrelated is what I'm trying to say. And if we're serious about making the kind of big changes that we need to address systemic forms of oppression in our K-12 systems, we need creative approaches. We need more empathy. We need to exercise our collaboration muscles, right? We're not going to run relatively business as usual and see the kind of changes we need to achieve the types of equity people are talking about, and that I hopefully we aspire to. We need those design tools, and design can't and shouldn't be done in isolation from thinking about those systems, from thinking about the historical forces of oppression that our schools have not been immune to, have been a part of. And so the conversations, I think, really need each other. And if I was to do like a state of the union or whatever, as you said, around designing K-12, the conversations are more and more finding each other. There's way more conversation about those intersections of racial justice, equity, systems change, and design than there were a decade ago. So I think there is movement there. There needs to be more movement there. The other piece, and it's not disconnected from that I'll highlight, is the move, the intentional move that a lot of folks have worked really hard to bring about, from designing for to designing with, and this notion of co-design that I think, has been bubbling and present for quite a while, but it's more and more central. It's rare now that I walk into a room or log onto a Zoom or whatever, and there's a conversation going on about designing K-12, and there isn't at least conversation about engaging the students or whoever the design work is supposedly on behalf of, engaging folks in the process as designers. So sometimes it may be happening more or less. Sometimes it may be more aspirational, but it's in the mix of conversation in a way that I wasn't seeing, again, a decade or so ago. So those are some trends that we're very aware of. And frankly, just to be transparent, that we've been working on in the lab over the last 5 years. Like, when we create an experience, when we bring educators in, students in, funders in, from education philanthropy, those are the topics that we're digging into together. If I could share one last theme, and I'll try to do it quick, I think it's a shift from, and this is beyond K-12, this is more around how we're thinking and talking about design more generally, from thinking about design as a relatively linear process to thinking about it as a set of abilities, mindsets, et cetera, that can be built and deployed in different sequences and combinations, depending on the big challenges that we're working on. And I think there was a long stretch where a lot of what people saw design as was like a relatively sequential process. And I don't think it ever has been that, but we're putting a lot of energy and trying to be deliberate about making clear, as we teach design to our students at Stanford, our students in the K-12 sector and beyond, it isn't just that. It isn't just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rinse and repeat. There's ways that you bring these different pieces in to the work you're doing, depending on what you're working on and what needs to change. Okay. Thanks for.
Yeah, I do want to. We do have time. I'd love to hear your take on it, Olatunde, being in it, and then also not as in it as Sam is. What's your thinking on the state of design thinking of today?
Yeah, I can't give I can't give a state of design thinking. I think, to my connection to the D School initially was that I run a community-based education nonprofit called Street Code Academy, which exposes and trains communities of color the mindset, skills, and access they need to enter the innovation economy. It just so happened that one of our slogans to talk about our work is called Hack, Hustle, Design the Future. So hack being coding and hustle being entrepreneurship, and design being what we said was the creative aspect of the innovation economy. But what has shifted in ours is very much aligned with what I think Sam spoke about, the broader state of the union, which is that now our students are looking at design not as a pillar of the innovation economy, but as a mindset to really push the bounds of whatever they want to create in the world. And I think that is a theme that I'm seeing, is that people are willing and confident to take on historic structures and reimagine something new. And that, we pushed, a lot of times, like, for example, the work I'm thinking about now is we think about like our 10-year, where's street code in 10 years, et cetera. our community is looking not necessarily at needing to fit into current structures, but how do we create new structures, right? And that again speaks to that blending of like the struggle for freedom in in all aspects of like the civil rights, or cutting down these barriers, and then also what are the tools that we have, educational tools, technological tools, and how do those blend? And we're in the intersection of that straight up, and every single one of our students is extremely confident to talk about whether it's the coding skills they have or the entrepreneurial skills they have, or any kind of creative thinking or design thinking that they have is going to be used towards building something that's going to give them joy, peace, love, freedom, ultimately in all aspects of their life. And for communities of color that have had to sort of fit within a context that was not created for them to succeed, that's pretty powerful. And I'm glad we're a part of.
That's amazing. Thank you both for that. I know this wasn't a state of the union of design thinking, but certainly need to think about. I'm gonna actually take us back for a second, Olatunde, where we started. While Sam was wrestling with the IT gods on the on the microphone part, we'd started talking about the nonprofit and the social entrepreneurial that I just talked to today, and the interesting closing of our conversation was around technologies like ChatGPT. That's now the label for the world is changing, but using that as the impetus for kind of putting an exclamation point on the conversation I had with the two of them. We got to the point in this hour and a half long conversation where we the three of us came to this conclusion that it is empathy, it's creativity, it's the feeling of purpose, and it's the humanity of the human being that is really all that we have to focus on in education. Everything else will be taken up by some technology, but it is really those three things. And so based on that, I really want to encourage people to pick up your book, Creative Hustle. It is an amazing read. It's not just an amazing read, it's a tool. It's a tool for making some change, a really meaningful change. I want to encourage you all to join our One Big Step coming up. I think we'll have a graphic for that. One Big Step coming up February 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern. It'll be an amazing workshop. It'll be us unpacking the book and helping people take that one big step. I think that's going to be really great after this conversation. I'm going to preview one other thing that's coming up. Even sooner than that, we have a One Big Step or a book study coming up with Joy Marchese on positive discipline. Actually, just today, it's number 2, February 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I think Joy is bringing Dr. Jane Nelson, which would be an amazing coup that we had the Dr. Jane Nelson from Positive Discipline and Positive Psychology with us. So I really hope you can join us for this book study number 2. If you didn't make book study number 1, you can still come to this one. On that note, I'd encourage everybody to join the What School Could Be community and thank my co-host, Susanna Johnson, and thank our 2 amazing authors. Thank you guys so much for your time. Olatunde, Sam, it's been really, really amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, take care. We'll see everybody real soon.
You all.
Peace.